Good afternoon, Mets fans, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and it is a dreary day in Pennsylvania, cold and feeling like the winter is coming, and the winter meetings are coming in baseball. And my most recent video talked a little bit about what happened last year, but here we're going to start talking about what's happening this year. And it starts with the finalization of the Mets coaching staff for 2018. 2 weeks ago, the team made some headlines when they announced Mickey Callaway was going to be the next manager of the Mets, but we all kind of knew that there was some additional work to be done at that point, and there were a lot of vacancies to fill. The vacancies started to be filled last week. Last week, the Mets announced that Dave Eiland would be the pitching coach, and they also announced that Kevin Long would not be returning as the hitting coach, and that instead, longtime assistant hitting coach Pat Roessler would get the everyday job. So Eiland, Roessler, and Callaway were assembled. We also knew that Ricky Bones, the bullpen coach, was going to be back. Ricky Bones, I think, now is the longest tenured member of the Mets coaching staff. But also returning is third base coach Glenn Sherlock, who I understand works very well with the catchers. So Glenn Sherlock will be back as a third base coach. So that leaves first base coach and bench coach to be filled, and those vacancies have also been filled since the last time I talked about at least this season. The bench coach job was filled over the weekend by Gary DiSarcina, who from all accounts is a really, really good players type bench coach. I think he'll gel very nicely with Mickey Callaway. They'll make a nice 1-2 punch on the bench. And as far as I'm concerned, Gary DiSarcina has learned from the best manager, at least for longevity's sake, Mike Scioscia, who for me has always been one of the best managers in baseball. Gary DiSarcina learned under Scioscia, and he was his bench coach for a number of years, and I'm excited to see him joining the Mets staff. I have said a couple of times that bench coach is going to be really important for the Mets this year because Mickey Callaway is a pitching guy, and this is his first time managing. It's important to bring in a guy who has experience as a bench coach, who has experience in a relatively large market, even though the Angels are most definitely a smaller, make up a smaller subset of the Los Angeles market, at least as far as the coverage is concerned. But it's important that he has that experience. So the bench coach will be DiSarcina, and that leaves first base coach. And this one is interesting. The Mets announced that former Phillies general manager and frequent name drop on the Goldbergs, Ruben Amaro Jr. would be the first base coach for the Mets. And that's just, to me, sort of surreal when you consider that he was really the guy that ran the enemy for a number of years during their peak years. Ruben Amaro and Tom Goodwin are basically swapping roles. The Mets' former first base coach, Tom Goodwin, will end up as the first base coach for the Red Sox, and the Mets will take Amaro to take Goodwin's place. But it's weird again to see Ruben Amaro, or at least it will be, to see Ruben Amaro Jr. wearing a Mets uniform. That's just, like I said, kind of surreal. So that's the coaching staff. The coaching staff is assembled. Mickey Callaway, the manager. Pat Roessler, the hitting coach. Dave Eiland, the pitching coach. Ricky Bones in the bullpen. Glenn Sherlock at third. Ruben Amaro Jr., a.k.a. Ruben Tomorrow Jr. for all you Phillies fans out there, at first base. And Gary DiSarcina, the bench coach. It's hard to say how this is going to turn out because you can't really judge a coaching staff on paper. You can't really look at how they're going to perform before the season starts. Their job is done in season, in game. And I'm just hoping that this staff can gel together. Now they have some time to work on some things in advance of the season starting, kind of figuring out game plans and who's going to be responsible for what aspects of game preparation and game planning. These are all important things that, again, are really sort of, I don't want to say undervalued, but they're not as black and white as performance. Where you can look at a pitcher and he, pitched a great game. He threw 7 innings, struck out 6 guys, no walks, 1 run allowed, 4 hits, whatever. That you can judge that performance, but it's not as easy to do that looking at a coach and looking at a coaching staff. So, for my money, I'm happy with where they are right now with this staff. It's very young. It's certainly younger as a collective group than it was last year and probably the last number of years. But that's in line with baseball. Baseball is getting younger at the executive and manager level, and it's nice to see the Mets following that trend. So I'm optimistic about the staff. I'm curious to see what everybody else thinks. So please let me know your thoughts, either in the comments section below or on Twitter at Mr_Met. That will wrap it up for today. I appreciate you guys watching the video. Again, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on the comments, let me know what you think about this Mets coaching staff for 2018. And until next time later in the week, as always, let's go Mets.